T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. He's your only black friend, so he's your best black friend. No one is waiting for another black friend, because black friends are rare, as you should be aware. He smiles like Richard Pryor, so just sit and stare. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler.
Hello, everybody. This is Tyler. So today I have a really special guest for this live stream. Her name is Dr. Madiha. How you doing, Doctor?
I'm good. It's Madiha.
Madiha. Okay, I'm so sorry. Sometimes I'm really bad at the foreign names. I sometimes mess it up a little bit. But do you like the introduction for the channel?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to introduce myself?
Sure.
Okay.
Why not? Sure.
So I'm a physician. I'm currently in United States, and I met Tyler through YouTube. One of our common friends, Nuria Khan. She has her own YouTube channel. We also, I think I've seen him in Twitter Spaces as well. And I also have my own YouTube channel, Madiha Talks. So that's how that's our common interest. We are into activism, talk about religion and other stuff. So that's what my introduction is.
Yeah, it's like, it's really funny how we both met Naria, because I met Naria last year in December through Twitter Spaces. It was like some sort of random space. It was involving, like, her former faith, and I just went inside the space and I just talked to her. It's like, oh my god, like a lot of stuff. And so she started to invite me to her channel, and then I found you, and now we're here together. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Sure.
So I guess, like, the first question I have for you is just like, what year, like month did you start your YouTube channel? How long have you been on YouTube?
Oh, just 1 year. I started last year in March, and wanted to just bring some change in society. Like, I'm currently in the United States. I was born in Pakistan, raised in Pakistan, but I feel like Pakistan, the society is like hundreds of years behind than the modern civilization. And still they're holding on to very old belief systems, and they're not willing to change. So it's very rigid kind of mindset. So I thought maybe softly break into the society and bring change. Otherwise it's just going downhill.
Right, because you mentioned to me before you went live that you do your content in Urdu. And so I guess your goals is to reach as many people as possible by speaking the language and telling them why exactly you think the way you do.
Right. So my audience is Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. I think a lot of people from subcontinent and Southeast Asia, they understand Urdu. Hindi is kind of the same. When you speak, it's same. It's only different when you write. So my audience can understand me. They just can't read if it's written Urdu. But I get a lot of requests that why don't you translate your videos? They seem very interesting. I would love to do that, but I just because I also have a full-time job, it's hard for me to, do multiple languages. So I did some videos in collaboration with Nuria because I wanted her to do the English part so I can do the Urdu parts, cuts down my work into half. So we're trying to collab.
Yeah, I understand what you mean because basically when it comes down to translation, it's like time consuming. I actually have done translation for many YouTube channels in Spanish, and so sometimes I would actually volunteer for the YouTuber to translate the Spanish into English, and it takes like a whole entire day for me to just go through a whole entire video. There's like a lot of consideration you have to do before you like write things down. Like how can you actually make the word very similar to your target language that you're trying to translate, like a lot of rephrasing, everything else. So I understand the pain for translation. I'm kind of curious. So when can you go into like your background about like how were you raised as a Muslim? Like can you go into your history, your family, and all of that?
Yeah, so like, moderate Muslim family, not my parents really. I didn't see them praying or anything. I never saw my father praying. There were like nobody was like standing there with a whip to, just do this, do that, pray and cover your head or something like that. Nobody did that. My like there it's like non-practicing Muslim family. I used to see my mother. Maybe sometimes she would pray, and maybe there are on gatherings on weekends. Maybe where do you kind of a mass or something in houses, but nothing more than that. So it was pretty, chill kind of atmosphere in my house. But in my family, there were some aunts and uncles. They were highly religious, so they used to uh, kind of lecture us more than my own parents. So most of the religious, understanding I got from them. So they were very influential in the whole family. You know how people who are more religious in the family, they get kind of a center place because everybody revered them. They're supposed to have more a hold on the family. It's just that how mindset works, like somebody, they're more closer to God, and so they're more holy, so everybody listens to them. So that's what it was. And they used to give us some books and something to cover your head, don't go outside, don't do this, like for girls mostly, like conservative society, religion only works for girls. And it used to frustrate me as a girl because I was like very tomboyish. I was born after, like, I was my elder sister, then I was born. So that was another problem in, Eastern households. Like, if there are two girls, then, if there is a first girl, then second one has to be a boy. So if there is a second girl child, then, oh my God, what happened? Then, it's kind of so I felt there was some resentment from my mother when I was born because I was a girl. Then my brother was born, so there was a sibling rivalry on top of, like more than normal because he was born, then he got more attention because he was the first boy, firstborn son. And so, there was like little bit, I saw inequality, it bothered me, all these restrictions as a girl. After, like, once I turned 12, I couldn't go outside and play. So these are, but it wasn't to the point that it would start me make like leave the religion. It wasn't that bad. It's just like it bothers you why it's happening. You try to make sense, it doesn't make sense, and then you just like learn to live with it. What options do you have?
Right. Yeah, it's like for my case, like I'm actually the oldest of three brothers. And so for my case, fortunately for my family, like they never like chose like, who's like the best like, sibling or whatever. It's like for me, it's like, I was treated equally like my brothers and vice versa. And so we didn't necessarily had like, that kind of thing. But I remember, at least speaking from my experience, that basically for myself, it's not necessarily that I was like the first one in the family to just question Christianity because I come directly from a Christian background. It was actually my brother, of all people, that started to question everything. It's like some sort of rippling effect, I heard, where once somebody in your family, starts to question something, then the rest of the family starts to question everything. And so he basically told me at some point that the main reason why he started to question Christianity was basically reading the Old Testament of the Bible. And he realized, like, oh my God, this guy character is not that great. And I was asking him at the same time, like, why are you questioning everything that we're raised with? And then I started questioning myself, and here I am today. But getting back to your story, you mentioned about, like, how you were raised a tomboy and how basically you were concerned about women's rights. What led you to get out of Islam? Like, what were some of the things that you thought that didn't make any sense to you?
So a lot of things, especially women's right, because I think I was a feminist even before I knew the word feminism, because that word I just heard while I moved to United States and the feminist movements came, Me Too movement came, that's probably when everybody kind of became familiar with the word. This is like something recent, right? Maybe it was going on in the West, but in Pakistan, we've never heard of the word. Even I never heard of the word atheist. So it used to bother me, multiple marriages. There were less share in property for girls. Then if a girl has to be accompanied by somebody, if she goes outside, girl has to cover their head. That was like that really used to bother me. So if you go for Hajj, you have to bring your male companion with you. So like a lot of things like girls are not enough, they're lesser than boys. It used to bother me a lot, like a lot. I used to say why I have like what is wrong with why God did that? This is so unfair. I used to say that a lot. So I
Yeah,
think it was
yeah.
back in.
Getting back to, like, again, sorry, 1 second there, but there's like a question for you. It's like, were you allowed to listen to music or watch movies?
Oh yeah, yeah. My family was like very moderate. It wasn't. There were my aunt who was in my my mother's older sister. They were very strict. So there were no movies, no songs in their household, but thankfully not in my household. Nobody cared.
Right. So you started to notice, like, I guess, different aspects of, like, I guess, maybe the Quran. So, like, what are some things that kind of stuck out to your mind when you began to question, like, would you have, like, some sort of, I guess, friends that basically dealt some of the stuff in the Quran before you started to doubt
So
yourself?
states that one friend, she came to America. She was doing her PhD, and she just once mentioned to me that she's an atheist. It's only mentioned because she felt safe talking to me. In Pakistan, you can once if somebody finds out that you left Islam, you can get killed. Really, it's not like because in Islam, if you leave Islam, the only your punishment is you getting killed. So people are really careful about this. So she only, she had confidence in me. She mentioned atheist, and that was the first time I heard. I was like, what does that mean? She says, I don't believe in God. So it was a huge like blow to me. Like, how is that possible? Somebody doesn't believe in God. Like, how can you not believe in God? He made everything. So that was in like back in 2014 or 15. So I was like, I felt bad for her. Oh man, she's astray now. She left the straight path, and may God bless her, may God guide her, or something like that. I felt bad in my head. But then I was also going through some personal problems in my life. So I thought maybe I should connect with God and start reading Quran. So I started reading Quran, listening to Quran, on audio from YouTube, but in Urdu. I said maybe I should understand it because we all of us like learn Quran in Arabic. None of us know exactly what it means except from whatever you hear from the mullahs and all that, from the mosques. So I started reading Quran, listening to Quran in Urdu. And so what I really wanted, what I was looking for it, like some compassionate words from God. I got you. Don't worry, my child. I'm here for you. Something like that. But it was a very scary, language. Like, I will burn you in hell, and they don't know what I'm going to do to them. They like, these people don't believe in me. I'll do this, I'll do that. And I was like, what is going on? It's like, why God is so obsessed? So one chapter, second chapter, third chapter, it was boring just to listen to the stories, and there's no mention of me. I was like, when is he gonna talk about me? It's like, where is this loving, kind God? But like, I didn't find the God what illusion I was given all my life. Like, I was raised like God loves you, God loves children, God loves, there was no mention of love. It was all about revenge. God is cursing on, non-Muslims, and they're this, they're that. It was like a very toxic kind of vibe. I stopped reading because my heart felt very heavy, because if you hear so much negative message, like not negative connotation, okay, so the righteous will go to heaven, but the wrongdoers will burn in hell, and then their skin will come off, and I'll give them new skin, and then that will come off, and then they'll stay there for eternity. I was like, what did I even, like, you're taking it personally, like, what did I even do to that extent that I deserve to burn in hell? Because listen, you literally feel like somebody's talking to you, and they're telling you this is how you are going to end up. And I was like, I mean, what did I do? Why would I go to hell? So, because that message is for you, right? Whoever is reading it. So, and then there were stories that didn't make any sense, like, Aisha's story, the prophet's wife, the child bride. Her necklace gets lost, and then she's left behind the caravan, and then they go back, and then there are some accusations on her character, and then God sends his testimony that she's innocent. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why do I care what happened?
Yeah,
Like,
just on a side note about Aisha, like, somebody like for somebody like me that was not necessarily raised in his faith, when I read the story of Aisha for the first time, I was just absolutely shocked, because according to the accounts of the Hadith, she was about 6 years old when she married Muhammad, and then he consummated a marriage when she was 9 years old. Now, I
yeah.
noticed, like, the apologists will say, well, you see, you need to take in consideration the time period. But I think the main reason why, I guess, people like me or like people like you were bringing up is largely because they need to replicate the actions of Muhammad, which includes marrying child brides in those particular places, unfortunately.
So the people do marry like younger girls, and they think it's sunnah. So, you can't, like, that's why the child marriages were not being able to be banned in Pakistan. Like, there was a lot of noise by the mullahs and everything that this is allowed in Islam. Pakistan is an Islamic country. How can you do that? So that was, we were growing up, we were so desensitized with this message that this never even occurred to me that this is a problem. It's only later, like, when you really start using your brain, you say, okay, how problematic it is. I was even not happy with so many marriages. I would say, why he had to marry so many women. So, in Pakistan, when you were growing up, you were told that, these were all mothers of all Muslims, and we are supposed to respect them. We're never supposed to question faith, and whoever questions, they are the ones who are on the wrong path. And God, I don't know, it's just so contradictory. The message is so contradictory, like, no matter how much you try to. So, I stopped reading Quran. That's what I'm saying, that because I was like, I started questioning. And then my friend's words, came in my mind, that she had left Islam. And I actually used to give her rebuttals. I used to, argue with her. Oh, so there's Zakir Naik, is a very famous scholar. He puts a very good show. Like, he gets, So I used to, like, listen to his lectures, and then would go back to her, and then she would say, there are scientific errors in Quran. What are you talking about? So I would get convinced, then go back to reaffirm my faith, because I also felt like my faith was dwindling. So then I started listening to another scholar called Ghamidi. He's very famous. He's the most moderate, one of the most, I think he's the only moderate scholar. He tries to water it down so much that you can't even, recognize this is the he's like so far off from the real message of Quran. He had watered it down so much, and the modern Muslims love him because they want Islam to be like that, but it's
Yeah,
not.
the thing about apologists, like it doesn't necessarily matter, like if it's like Christian apologists or Muslim apologists. One thing that I notice is that they always tend to just distort the truth, and it's like to defend the faith, at all costs. And so whenever I do like the research about particular things regarding like the Abrahamic faith, I try to look outside the apologists and look at the secular scholars and the religious scholars. That way I get a better idea about what exactly the texts actually mean, while the apologists will use the exact same data and just twist and turn it no matter what.
Right, so he's the one who actually said, oh, actually, there was a mistake in Hadith. Aisha was not 9, she was actually 19. The number 1, the digit is missing. So it's like, it's comical because there were like 6 or 7 different places where that is mentioned. Even when I was growing up, I read in my books that he used to play with her dolls, and he used to play with her, little girlfriends, because it was shown that he was so kind and loving. That's what we were told when we were growing up. But now you think back, I was like, okay. So so he is so apologetic. He's just so he's the last thread you hold on to before leaving Islam. So every ex-Muslim story you'll hear, the last thing that they were holding on to was Ghamidi, because they really wanted to not leave their faith. They really wanted it to be true and to be like what Ghamidi says it is, but it's not, because the real text itself, you read, it's super problematic. So what there were so many problems that I did not, understand. Like, God is very angry and mean and almost bipolar. Like, on one side he's saying one thing, he's very happy, he's giving you heaven, then he's so angry that he's just like throwing people in hell like a Godzilla. But I was like, why? I don't know a single person in my life who I want to burn in hell. Like, not a single person. I can, not even like some rapist or something. They deserve some punishment, but not burning in hell. That's very torturing, right? Like, what kind of God would throw his own humans in hell? Like, hell is a very ugly place, like, so as the humanity in me that doesn't want me to believe there is a place called hell that exists, right? And then he's bipolar, he's narcissist, he just wants to be praised, like, and then God says in Quran that his love is as like a love of a mother, but mother never like leaves her children crying, or begging, or in sorrow. Mother never punishes her children, even if, no matter what wrong they do, she never throws them in hell. So I would say, what kind of God is this, like, who's just so angry? So the image of God just fell apart. So basically, why you believe in religion? Because you love God, right? But the image of God was so bad, like, it's just shattered. It's like, this is not what I thought God was. I thought he was so much better, but he seems like such a petty man who is just petty, being who is competing with the Satan who he created himself, right? So I just didn't understand why he's just fixated on small group of kafirs, like a small group of infidels in a small part of the world in Arab. It's not even the entire planet. It's like small local part of the Arab in one point in time. That just didn't, and I just didn't understand that, why he's so fixated. So I was like, come on, you're God. You're better than that. You created the whole universe, you know? So that's what once the main thing it shatters, then you start questioning everything. So then I was like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you mentioned it's interesting that you mentioned about, of course, hellfire, because I can only imagine, there has been studies and that basically psychologically that it does in fact affects the development of kids and adults, because I think there's like one study that talks about how many kids suffer directly from nightmares because they directly believe in the ideas of hellfire. And I guess for your case, do you still have some sort of religious trauma even after, I guess, leaving the faith and thinking it doesn't make any sort of sense to you?
Yeah, the trauma I had is like, when I was growing up, we were told that when a woman doesn't cover her head, an angel curses her each time she leaves the house, or each strand of hair she shows, the angels start cursing. So I never liked covering my head, so there was no compulsion from my family. But each time I used to go out, I would feel guilty. Like, I would feel ashamed of myself, like I am not doing something that God wants me to do. But I would feel like there are angels standing there and cursing. And that is still now on back of my mind. Like, I can't just uh, like shrug off this thought. So this is very traumatic. For me, it's very traumatic.
Wow, that is crazy. Like, I feel really fortunate not to have this sort of trauma, but I remember when I was growing up, like, for the Catholic faith I was raised in, I basically was taught at least three different concepts. I was taught heaven, I was taught purgatory, and I was also taught hell. But fortunately for me, I don't think I ever have any sort of nightmares about hellfire. I guess I'm like one of the few ones that are really lucky. Um, so basically, since you start questioning everything, like I'm just kind of curious, like what made you think, like hey, I do not believe in God anymore. Like I don't think there's a supernatural being that covered me. It's like what made you turn into an atheist?
So, I was talking to my friend. She's very smart. She was doing a PhD and she, did medicine with me, and we were class fellows in med school. So, not that I, because of her, but I also, when I was looking for comfort in, the word of God, I didn't find that. In fact, I find many problematic things on my own. And then I went to that, reached that point where God allowed Muhammad to marry his adopted son's wife, and I was like, how specific is that? How is that an existential problem? Like, how many men would want to marry their adopted son's wife that God literally had to send a separate verse for it, and that stays in his book until eternity? Like, nobody wants to marry their adopted son's wife. That's literally a verse in Quran. So it's like a waste of words. So I was like, but we know that he married his adopted son's wife. So so that just gave it away that he wrote it up. Then also his wife Aisha's, the necklace story, he just wrote it up to prove her innocent because he loved her. She was the youngest of all and probably pretty or something. So I was like, that story doesn't make any sense. What are we achieving from it? What kind of guidance we are getting from it? Then there was like few other, when you go to Muhammad's house, leave early. It's like these kind of verses. I was like, no way, he just wrote them up. And then, and then back and forth. It's like repetitive, basically repeating the same thing. So it's like, I heard you said that in last chapter or last verse, like, why are you repeating yourself, So it just didn't make any sense. Like, if you read it in Arabic, it may sound some holy text, but if you read it in your own language, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. So that's when I started questioning. Then my friend told me, read Christopher Hitchens. So I read God is Not Great, and at that time I was reading Sapiens, and I went through the Breaking the Spell by Daniel Dennett. Then I read Dawkins, The God Delusion. Then I read Four Horsemen. Then Sam Harris came. I read like 3 or 4 of his books, and then I read the Robert Wright's book. It should be here somewhere. That's also The Evolution of God. So all these books like literally opened my mind. And in 2018, I was like, this is, the Ramadan was coming. I stopped, praying. I didn't fast that year, and I was like, and I never looked back.
Yeah, on the side note about like the Four Horsemen, like Do you have a favorite one of the bunch? Like you said, Christopher Hitchens, Ricker Dawkins. Like, what's just your favorite one?
Who is my favorite one?
Yes.
I think God is Not Great is so on point, and then I love Sam Harris.
Yeah, because I think, of all the horsemen, my favorite one probably might be like Christopher Hitchens,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. Christian is very smart, very smart, and funny. It was
Yeah, I
so
think I think my favorite documentary from Christopher Hitchens was about like his I think it was like about Mother Teresa. It was a really good documentary.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The Mother Teresa part in his book is funny, quite funny. Like the good thing is he treats all religions equally, like criticize everything like the same way. He doesn't have a bias.
Exactly. Right. So getting back to your story, like you mentioned that you read like a lot of different books, you started to question everything. And so I guess my question then becomes like, what's your advice for people, who are like in a relationship with a person like is a Muslim, but like another person like an ex-Muslim? Like, how do you have any sort of like, do you have any sort of advice to,
So
raise the kids?
yeah,
Yes.
there will be very few ex-Muslim women. Women are so indoctrinated, the Muslim women. Uh, it will be very rare you'll find a girl who left Islam. So I would say, so if you have become ex-Muslim, just don't, and you really love your husband or wife, and they are religious, do not discuss religion. Just do not discuss this topic at all. And if you have children, I would say just avoid talking about religion with them as well. Just talk to your spouse that why don't we introduce them to religion once they're a little bit older so they can decide for themselves. That's just a request, but mostly Muslim people would not listen to this. They're not very rational about it. Religion, they just want to drop down their throats as soon as possible because the fear that they wouldn't be as Muslim as they wanted. So it's a very tough situation, but just don't talk about it, I would say.
Yeah, I noticed like I never talk about this particular topic unless it's my brother. That's yeah,
Yeah.
because I want to, get along with everybody in the family, and so the only people I talk about this particular topic is like my brother, maybe like close friends, maybe like people like you, but outside of that, I can't talk about it.
For me too, I found my online community where I talk to like-minded people who understands, but yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah. Right, right. Yeah, so it's like, it's interesting you mentioned like, there are stuff in the Quran that you found surprising. Do you have like, a list of some of the stuff you find like, the most disgusting or like maybe like the top 5 list of like the most disgusting things in the Quran for you?
Yeah, so for me, the verse about marrying your adopted son's wife was a big turn off for me. Then Aisha's necklace was just didn't make any sense. Then there's a verse in Quran, then women are your tilth. The women are man's tilth. You may enter whichever way you want. And there is a sexual connotation to it. The background story is very, that was a big turn off. Then there's a verse in Quran that says that if you call your wife that you look like my mother by mistake, your marriage is broken, your vows are broken, so you need to either renew your vows or sacrifice goats, or you just free the camels, or no, free the slaves, or sacrifice this many goats or something like that. And I was like, what is this? What does this mean? Just say sorry. I was like, why do you have to do? And then I was like thinking, this message is so outdated. We don't have slaves anymore. So one of the God's solution is like expired. It's like, how are we supposed to free slaves when we don't have them? And then Quran doesn't mention anything about ending the slavery. Then there is wife beating verse, and then there are like women have less share than men, women have less intellect than men. There are no women. Women are not even like human. So they're like literally like a property. And that's the same for all these archaic religions. It's not that Islam is the unique one. all these religions, they were made at that time when women didn't have the status of, equality. So what do you expect? But the most stupid thing is people in this time and age still believe in this. So that's the hurtful part, is like the women, Muslim women who settle down for less, like when they can be. There are literally my friends who defended how they deserve to be beaten up by men. It's like you literally, like, want to bang your head to the wall. Like, why would you say? Yeah,
Oh
why
my goodness, no. Like, that reminds me about yesterday. Like, I was at a Twitter space yesterday, and they were basically like Christian women doing the exact same thing, but not for the beating part, but basically when it comes down to marriage, they say that basically when you want to, get remarried, it's a form of adultery. And because of that, they feel shame, they feel guilt to not remarry their partner, or because they want to stay in a marriage so badly because God mandates that you cannot possibly get a divorce, they will take the abuse no matter what. And so when I was listening to the women yesterday about the whole entire issue about marriage, I was kind of shocked how much stuff that they want to, accept, because like pretty much physical and mental abuse if you actually defend that.
Yeah, so also, there's so many things that, for marriages, there are women who would defend that. I was like, how don't you want your partner to be only for yourself, just like he wants you for, unless there is polyandry allowed, like, so many things that women defend it. They just don't understand. Then their intellect is half. Your testimony is considered half as of a man. And there are women who will give you explanations why. And it's like, no, not for me. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, there's also, I noticed like plenty of like, scientific errors too. Since you're a physician, I guess it's kind of embarrassing now looking at the science claims for the Quran, right?
Yeah, yeah. For me, different people leave for different things. Like everybody has their own deal breaker. For me, women's rights and then God's own personality was messed up. And then how he talks about non-Muslims. For me, human rights are very important. So more than scientific errors, because you can always play with the translation, wrong this, wrong interpretation part in scientific science, because the language is so vague. There is nothing you can prove from it, right? You can be both ways, but the human rights and women's rights are literally in black and white. You can't say play with the words there. Their wife beating is there. There is no end to slavery. So for me, more than scientific errors, because they can always argue, oh no, this is vague and this, but these things are applicable by Sharia, and whichever countries have Sharia, these things are there. Women are getting half share, men are getting marrying 4 times, they can beat their wives, they can marry child. So those things are there, but the scientific part, you can always argue. So they can always get away with that. So that's why science was, I would have never left it because of the science. If there was only scientific errors, I would have given benefit of doubt. Okay, maybe God was being vague or something. So that part, actually, I didn't pay attention much.
So there's a question from Paul. He asked right here, what do you think about the future of Pakistan, the future of women's rights in Pakistan?
Yeah, it's women are waking up in Pakistan. There is a feminist movement, very strong feminist movement going on in Pakistan. I think one of the strongest in Southeast Asia. I think more than India, I think. Because women have been suppressed for a very long time and they're not going to go back. So I think all these movements start like that. Eventually, also, free thinkers and atheists, they're not declaring themselves, they call themselves liberal, secular, hiding behind these words because you can literally get killed in Pakistan if you declare yourself an atheist. So they are also, their voices are becoming louder, and they are having a lot of following. Younger generation is leaving Islam very, very fast. Also, they did this thing like single national curriculum, where used to have different curriculum for private schools and government schools, but in past government they unified the whole curriculum, and now they have imposed from kindergarten until 12th grade everyone has to read Islamiyat, like Islam as a subject, and everybody has to read Quran in Arabic, memorize the verses, memorize the, so it's a compulsory subject. Imagine if Bible becomes compulsory from kindergarten until the 12th grade. Everybody has to memorize the chapters and translations and whatnot. So that has become a separate subject, which is an absolute waste of time for everybody. So the that has kind of I think it's going to fire back, because that's a lot of pressure on children other than other subjects, science, maths, English, physics, chemistry, biology. That's a separate subject that kind of needs a lot of time and effort. So eventually, I mean, right now the things are very bad, but we can always be hopeful.
Yeah, so I guess maybe for the future, like, how can, I guess, the ideas of secularism can actually take place in Pakistan then? Because would it be like activism, or maybe like, books, like, translating like, the Four Horsemen into Urdu, that way more people read it? Or could
Yeah.
it be like, or maybe like, doing the campaigns like you're doing right now in your videos? Like, how can you think this will possibly change over time?
That's what we are doing. That's why I started, like, you have to educate them, you have to infiltrate through internet. A lot of these channels get banned. My channel is not banned yet, but Haris Sultan, if you've heard of him, he's a very famous YouTuber from Pakistan. Nuria, I'm not sure about Nuria's channel is banned or not, but it's in English, so maybe it's not banned. But Haris Sultan makes Urdu videos, and there are some other, Ghalib Kamal and all that. So they are banned, but you can get through VPN. There is a lot of following. And then there are other people who started speaking up. You can't, gag people's voices. So eventually but the education system is so bad. There's so much ignorance, illiteracy, it's like a whole mush of, and then there's a lot of resentment for the West, and that is created by the mullahs, and from the they're giving this loudspeakers in the mosques. No, there's no check and balance. There's no check and balance what they're saying, what they're preaching. They're literally polluting people's minds, and what they say it's really not true about the West. So there's a lot of resentment, and like average common Pakistani doesn't even know what West is actually. They think it's a villain. They're there to get them. So it's like yeah, it's messed up. Sorry.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of convincing to do over time, but I'm pretty sure once your channel starts to get higher with the subscriber rates, maybe it'll be like a big change. I guess, also when it comes down to the Quran, I also noticed like, there's like a lot of stuff in the Bible that's in the Quran, but even then, so it's like a copy of a copy of a copy.
Plagiarized. It's, of course, it's plagiarized. Arabs were Bedouins, and they didn't have books, or they were just copying stuff there. I think Bible was plagiarized from Hebrew Bible or something.
Yeah. Because for the case of the Bible, there's like a lot of stories that are cross parallel. For example, if you compare the flood story of Noah's Ark to Gilgamesh, there's like a lot of direct parallels that way. And I also there's like some sort of cross parallels to the Aluma Elish for the first chapter of Genesis. That's like another parallel right there. There's like direct parallels to Romulus for the Cain and Abel story. So there's like a lot of stories throughout that might have direct parallels or copying of other stories that predates it.
I read Genesis when I was reading about the religion, and I was comparing Quran to Bible and all that. And when I was in the process of questioning, right? So I read Genesis, and then God made it in 6 days, and then rested on 7 day. That was so childish. I was like, this is even worse than Quran. So the language was so babyish, like some baby wrote a story, like some like kindergarten kid wrote a story. Then there was a story about Sodom and Gomorrah. a
Yeah.
Lut story. He offers his daughters, and then they go to a cave. He hides there, and then one of the daughters, she gives him alcohol or something, intoxicate him to have sex with him.
Yeah.
She becomes pregnant. I was like, what is this? I was like, this chapter is missing in Quran. It's like they forgot to copy this, or maybe this was too outrageous. And then there was the story of Joseph that his brothers like throw him in the well. So that story is copied in Quran, like this word to word, except for maybe about the that he has dreams, 7 years of starvation, then 7 years of like a lot of wealth and something like that, and then king. It was just, I was like, all these stories are copied from each, Quran copied everything. And then when
Yeah.
you pick of Gilgamesh, or actually, um, uh, what do you call the text, the tablets?
Yeah,
What
yeah, the tablet for Gilgamesh,
the
yes.
codes of Hammurabi? There is an eye for an eye. That's literally in Bible. Then that translates in Quran. Literally, the concept is coming from codes of Hammurabi. So maybe they were traveling at that time from one place to another, bringing the word of mouth from here to there, or maybe it was law commonly practiced everywhere because people were very revengeful. Nothing much, you know, worldly possessions, and then all this revenge and battles and tribal wars going on at that time. So basically, it's just so regressive. Like nothing, it has nothing to do with modernity. And people derive their ethic and morals from these books. These books are so out of line.
Yeah, I think the main reason why there's like, direct parallels from like, these other stories from the Bible and the Quran is like you were saying before, because it was actually people groups that were actually together. Because not so, if I remember correctly, I believe it was actually Alexander the Great that basically conquered large parts of land, which would mean that we also go to all the way to Arabia, and so they'll probably exchange ideas that way from like the Greek gods and the other kind of ideas from the Greek religions there. And also I know that for the fact, like I think it was like the ancient Canaan religion, it was like and I guess you could say what was Israel right now. And so they started exchanging stories between that and Mesopotamia that way. And so I think there's like a lot of direct parallels because it's like direct connection with these other people groups, and that's why they share the same sort of stories.
Yeah, and there is a mention of Alexander the Great in Quran. It says Zulkarnain.
Yeah.
He's mentioned as Zulkarnain. It literally means man with two horns, and seemed like he was wearing some sort of helmet that had two horns in it. So that's what it was called. So, I mean, it's all fables and tales and literally long, angry rant from God. Nothing more than that.
Right, right. Yeah, because when I started to, compare all these stories when I was about 17 years old, it's like I cannot really say it's not really divinely inspired, because if it's really divinely inspired, then why would all these other stories look so similar to the stories that we have? And so it kind of lowered the probability for me for something being divinely inspired. Because if I can say that there are direct people groups that have like direct contact with these other people groups with these same stories, then I'll need to have the supernatural explanation of why we have the same story.
No, so what I think when I like read these stories and I was started thinking, I was like, is it the same God who made like Einstein and Newton and all these intelligent brains, and he talks like this? Doesn't make any sense. It's like he created this whole universe, and he's focused on these people, and he's so grudgy. He's holding grudge against Satan and all these rituals, and then the story of Abraham murdering his own son, sacrificing him. So these just, I mean, I don't know. I think once you start thinking, none of it is makes sense. It's only a matter of coming out of this. Once this blind, what do you call it,
Blind
comes off,
faith.
yeah, blind faith comes off your eyes, then you start seeing it clearly. Like literally, some people snap out of it, and some people take their time because they're not sure. But once I come out of it, it's like literally like spell is broken, and now you can see it. This is how it happened with me.
Right. So I think before we sign off, I want to, can you share like your social media before we shut down? Because I think more people should join your channel and, check out your content that way.
Is Madiha Talks, Madiha Talks, Madiha Talks, like I talk. That's my name. So it's in Urdu, but if you subscribe, that will just help my channel grow and maybe reach to bigger audience. All I want is my voice to be heard in Pakistan, so my message goes across, and like hopefully, like a lot of people, I feel like even if I'm able to change 10 people's mind, and people have, they've been writing to me then how it's influencing them. So imagine 10 people, then how it doubles, those 10 people are going to affect 10 more people, or maybe 20 more people in their family, immediate family, their children. So it's going to kind of ripple effect. It's going to replicate each time somebody. So hopefully that's the education is the only way. There is no other way. There's no simple, it's going to be hard. I may not be able to live to see it in my lifetime, but it has to come because they have been dripping in ignorance for a very long time, and if we don't educate, they're probably going to stay. I feel like Pakistan is going to become a headache for the rest of the world. Like it's going to become a white elephant, like the way they are, and it's literally going downhill. It's not improving.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and effort to share your story with my audience. And again, please check out her channel if you guys want to, check out her content, and check out her social media in the description box down below. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time to come here.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice talking to you. Bye.